You might say, well, what might you replace an ideology with? And I would say, well, a differentiated view of and strategy for life. And so when I work with my clients, I never start with high order problems to begin with, like how do I orient myself spiritually? So let's just leave that aside for a second, okay? We'll return to it. So what do you need to get straight in your life? Well, you need a job or a career. Career preferably, perhaps. The advantage to a job is that you do it for 8 hours, let's say, and you're done, right? With a career, you're in it all the time. Now, you'll make more money, you'll advance up the economic hierarchy, but you're never done with work if you have a career. And maybe that's what you want. But in any case, you have to have a job or a career. Why? Well, you don't want to starve. You want to take care of yourself and the people that are dependent on you. There are practical, obvious practical reasons, but there are psychological reasons too. I mean, a job gives you something to do every day, just as your career does. And it also addresses the deep human need to be of value and service to other people. And so that needs to be attended to. So if you're a young person, it's like, okay, have a plan. You need a job and a career. It would be good if it was something that you could be competent at. So the smarter you are, pure IQ, the more complex job you can manage. And then if you add the development of discipline to that, so that's the development of conscientiousness, that can further you. So you need conscientiousness and intelligence to be competent. And the more hardworking you are and the more intelligent, the more complex the job you can manage. So if you're of average intelligence, which you've probably figured out by the time you're 18 or so, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be a high-end corporate lawyer unless you work insanely hard. So your better bet is to pick a profession that isn't so cognitively demanding, that's still useful. And trades are great as far as I'm concerned. It's not like tradespeople aren't skilled, and it's not like trades don't require intelligence. I am not saying that. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't require as much abstraction, generally speaking. Like if you want to be a lawyer, you have to be hyper literate and like 90th percentile literate fundamentally. And you have to be able to formulate verbal arguments, or you're going to get crushed by someone who can do it. Okay, so job and career, you need a plan. Okay, education. You should be as educated as you are intelligent. You should have a plan for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and it should continue because things change quick and you better keep up. Okay, so you should have a vision of that. People don't seem to do well without an intimate relationship. It'd be good if you could have a family and bring peace to the family that you have, because family is important, extraordinarily important. Those connections, so intimate relationship and family, whether that's your parents, your siblings, or the family that you start, you need a plan for that and a vision of that. You have to take care of your physical and mental health. You have to regulate your drug and alcohol intake. You have to figure out how to make productive and meaningful use of the time that's allotted to you outside of your obligations. That's extraordinarily useful. And you have to address your philosophical or spiritual / aesthetic yearnings, such as they might be. Well, so that's better than an ideology, a plan.
Sure, right.
Now, and as you climb up your career, as you expand your competence and power, well, then you can get involved in larger scale transformations if that's where your interest takes you. And so with job and career, you should be competent and interested in it. That's a good pathway to success. I had already concluded intellectually that there was nothing good about nihilism and bitterness and resentment, that it was unbelievably dangerous, and that it isn't justified under any circumstances. And then I entered these extreme circumstances and I thought, well, this justifies it. It's like, I can't see how anybody could be in this situation and not shake their fist at God and in outrage. But I really, really thought it through and talked to my wife about it. And all I could conclude was that that was wrong, is that it didn't justify it. There was nothing good in it. There was nothing helpful in it. All it was doing was hurting me. It was interfering with whatever good I still might be able to do in the world. The last chapter of my new book is Be Grateful in Spite of Your Suffering. And that was a chapter I, worked on and was doubtful about and returned to, and was like thoroughly irate about and felt hypocritical about, and so on and so forth, the full gamut of emotional responses. But it's the right thing to do, to be grateful. It's, and I'm not claiming this for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's tightly allied with a kind of existential courage. It's a decision. And, undoubtedly there are people who've been pushed farther in the domain of pain than me. Burn victims, people, suffer unimaginable agony. And I would never dare to compare my pain to someone else's extraordinary pain. It was certainly far worse than every day that I spent in the last 2 years was worse than any day I had before that, by a huge margin. For me, it was, well, like I said, if it had got any more extreme, I can't imagine that I would have lived through it. So the first conclusion was, you still, under those conditions, you orient yourself upward and you try to do good in the world, and you don't, if you fall prey to resentment and anger and hostility, however justified, not even however rationalized, but however justified, even if an objective observer would say, well, no wonder you feel that way, it's not helpful.
So there is no good in it. That's what you said.
I see no good in it.
But then I wonder, like I would agree with you. I'm inclined to agree with that there's no good in that. But there's the old cliched adage about going through hard times, revealing certain silver linings and certain benefits that you may not see in the moment. So are you open to that possibility of, in the future, some realization?
There has been, I guess that this thing we already discussed, I would say, is of benefit. Whether that benefit justifies what I went through, I would say. So would I repeat what I went through, and still going through for that matter? I mean, I've only been feeling somewhat better for 5-6 days. I wouldn't repeat it to learn that.
Well, and maybe you're still learning something. Maybe there's still something that's to come, some realization. I mean, I'm not saying that's the case.
I know you're not. Yeah. Well, God only knows, right? I mean,
God knows.
It wasn't until this last week that I really thought that through and realized that however extreme my pain, which was diffuse, it didn't justify resentment. It didn't justify ingratitude. It certainly didn't make those things work. But then the other thing that I did realize was, and people have commented on that being a difference between this book and the first book. The second book is more communitarian. There's less humor in it because I just wasn't up to humor, But there's more emphasis on cooperation and the social role in ethical behavior. And I think that's partly a consequence of me observing how far above the call of duty my friends and my family went while they were caring for me. And not only my friends and my family, but medical personnel and the general public who've been the general public, my viewers, readers, and listeners, let's say, have been unbelievably loyal and supportive. And so I've seen this outpouring of love from, at the micro level within my family and from my friends and from people I don't know, but who I communicate with. That saved my life for sure. There's no doubt about that. Multiple times, many, many times. The reason I emphasize individual responsibility, there's two reasons. One is, you can start right now, right where you are, no matter what you're doing. So you have that at hand. Second, if you become more responsible, you probably won't hurt anyone by doing it, right? It removes the convenience of the enemy. And that's given how terrible it is for us to generate say, class-based explanations of enmity or racial-based explanations of enmity, that's something we really have to step carefully around. I mean, the worst crimes the human race has ever committed have been generated by class-based hypotheses of malevolence, class or ethnicity-based hypotheses of malevolence. It's terrible. And we need to avoid that. And I don't see that adopting more individual responsibility, even though it's not a cure-all, it doesn't, that's one danger it doesn't pose, in my estimation.